So the top U.S. military commander overseeing operations in the Caribbean is voluntarily stepping down, an unusual move, as Admiral Holsey is just 1 year into what is typically a 3-year rotation. Now, this comes amidst new reporting that Secretary Hegseth did not believe Admiral Holsey was moving quickly or aggressively enough in the Caribbean, while SOUTHCOM was concerned that the operations might not be lawful. And that brings us to today, where Trinidad and Tobago joins Colombia in saying that their citizens have been killed in recent U.S. strikes. Breaking news that an overnight strike left survivors who have now been picked up and detained aboard a U.S. Navy vessel. And prepping for a regime change operation, Venezuelan President Maduro has mobilized his troops in the north. So happy Friday to you, too. This is a lot. Let's start out with this unexpected retirement from the top U.S. military commander overseeing U.S. Southern Command. The announcement came through U.S. Southern Command as well as the Department of War. Secretary Hegseth saying, quote, "On behalf of the Department of War, we extend our deepest gratitude to Admiral Alvin Holsey for his more than 37 years of distinguished service to our nation as he plans to retire at year's end." Rather boilerplate announcements, as you would expect in a situation like this. What's unexpected is the timing. This is a 3-year rotation. This is the peak, kind of the pinnacle of Holsey's career, as is anyone who commands something like a combatant command like U.S. Southern Command. It's strange to go into that and spend 37 years building up to this point and then say, nah, actually going to call it quits. Especially notable given we've seen a significant uptick in military operations in the Caribbean directly under the command of Admiral Holsey. Now, according to some reporting in CNN that has been pushed back on by the Department of War, they say there's actually been significant tension between the Admiral and Secretary Hegseth, as the Admiral may have been suspicious or skeptical about the legal justification of ongoing operations. CNN says the news comes just days after the U.S. military conducted its 5th known strike on a boat alleged to be trafficking drugs off the coast of Venezuela, killing 6 people. It also comes 1 day after President Trump said publicly that he had authorized the CIA to operate inside of Venezuela to clamp down on the flow of drugs and migrants. Also on Wednesday, U.S. Air Force B-52s flew off the coast of Venezuela for more than 4 hours. They say tensions had been simmering between Hegseth and Admiral Holsey for weeks before the Admiral announced he was leaving, 2 sources familiar with the matter told CNN. Hegseth did not believe Holsey was moving quickly or aggressively enough to combat drug traffickers in the Caribbean, and he complained about not being given the information he needed about the operations. But SOUTHCOM was concerned about the operations not being lawful. The tensions came to a head during a meeting between Hegseth, Holsey, and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Dan Kane on October 6th at the Pentagon. Holsey offered to resign during the meeting, but the idea was tabled and his departure was not announced until a week later. His departure will also not be imminent. Instead, he'll retire at the end of the year. Now, the Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell pushed back on this reporting, saying, quote, "This is a total lie. Never happened. There was no hesitation or concerns about this mission, just more fake news." Now, we've heard a lot of different angles around the pushback on these strikes in the Caribbean for some time now. This is not the first reporting. This is the first reporting that I've seen suggesting that senior military leadership is uncomfortable with some of these strikes. But to that end, President Trump was talking yesterday, and they asked him about what the future of these operations look like, maybe going after Venezuela on land. And I want you to pay attention with his answer here. And it might play into what Secretary Hegseth was getting frustrated with about operations maybe not moving fast enough. Here's President Trump.
What's the next step in this war on cartels, and are you considering options, are you considering strikes on land?
Well, I don't want to tell you exactly, but we are certainly looking at land now because we've got the sea very well under control. We've had a couple of days where there isn't a boat to be found.
All right, so a couple key takeaways there. First off, of course, the indication that we might be looking at, and I think this has been the case for a while, strikes inside of Venezuelan territory. As we've mentioned in recent videos, the most likely avenue to carry those out would be Tomahawk cruise missiles carried on a number of vessels that are now operating off the coast of Venezuela, maybe even the F-35s, which wouldn't technically be needed to penetrate Venezuelan airspace, but it would provide an added layer of protection for our pilots, possibly Reaper drones that we have in the region, but those could be pretty effectively shot down by Venezuela. Either way, it does seem like that is probably coming soon. Looks like Maduro is prepping for that as well. Now, something we've heard continually from President Trump and others in the administration is they're running out of boats in the Caribbean. And I think if you step back, that might be a part of what Secretary Hegseth is complaining about here in this reporting from CNN, where they say that he is not given the information that he has needed about operations and that the admiral was not moving fast enough or aggressively enough to carry out some of these strikes. That does kind of line up with there not being a lot of boats in the Caribbean. Now, I'm not entirely sure which direction to take that, but I do think one connects to the other. Now, Reuters is reporting that there was another strike overnight. And this is interesting because we haven't heard anything official from the Pentagon quite yet, or the Department of War, or the White House, or anybody. But we seem to be getting some reporting from unofficial sources confirming aspects of this. Reuters said the U.S. military carried out a new strike on Thursday against a suspected drug vessel in the Caribbean. And in what is believed to be the first such case, there were survivors among the crew. The development raises new questions, whether the U.S. military rendered aid to the survivors and whether they are now in U.S. military custody, possibly as prisoners of war. There was an update provided to this where they say the U.S. military is now holding 2 survivors aboard a Navy ship after rescuing them in the aftermath of a U.S. strike on Thursday on a suspected drug vessel in the Caribbean that killed 2 others. 3 sources familiar with the matter told Reuters on Friday. This opens up a whole can of worms. We haven't had this yet. Now, we're going to get into some reports that maybe some of the people we're killing, we don't actually know who they are. They might not be who we think they are. But in this case, what do we do with these guys? Assuming they're guys, right? Are they prisoners of war? Are they going to Guantanamo? Are we bringing them back to the United States? Are they going to face trial for drug trafficking in the United States? This is, again, a complete can of worms because we have changed how we are going after these cartels just in the last couple weeks. You'll recall that what has traditionally been drug interdiction operations, a legal question. We've gone about this through legal mechanisms in the United States. We've transitioned over to military operations and started carrying out drone strikes, eliminating this threat well off the coast of the United States. And the justification that the Trump administration has laid out is that the cumulative effect of what these cartels are bringing into the United States justifies or constitutes an attack on the American people. Therefore, it can be met with lethal force. So what are these? I mean, the Trump administration said that we are now in an armed conflict with the cartels. Are these enemy prisoners of war? This is going to be, I don't know exactly what's going to happen with this, but that's, again, just news coming out in the last hour or so here. Really kind of changes. It's going to, I think, put to the test exactly how we're framing operations in the Caribbean. Now, a part of this as well is we may hear from the people that were on that boat, find out their nationality, where they were coming from, where they were going to, because we're starting to get more and more countries in the Caribbean speak up saying, those are our citizens. You just killed not Venezuelans, not cartel members, but citizens of our country. The most recent is coming from CBS, where they say police in the Caribbean island nation of Trinidad and Tobago told CBS News that they are investigating reports that 2 of their citizens were among 6 people killed in the United States' most recent strike that was carrying drugs. The police service said it was aware of reports that citizens of the country, which lies less than 10 miles off the coast of Venezuela, had been on the vessel. They are conducting inquiries, but and I want to stress this, they said the information is yet to be fully verified through official channels. So just to stress, there's been no confirmation of that. It is a alleged report. But this follows a statement from the Colombian president last week saying that their citizens had been targeted and killed in another one of these strikes. And look, I want to play one of the strikes, the most recent strike here, and read some of we don't need to look at the actual footage to get this piece. It's probably more important to see exactly what the president is saying, where I want to stress they're not calling out that these are Venezuelan nationals. So while a lot of the focus and a lot of the media attention just in the last couple of days has been on Venezuela, from Tren de Aragua, the cartel of the Suns, Maduro himself being an illegitimate president, when you look at the information coming out from these strike announcements, they never mention the nationality of the people that were killed. So the most recent publicly acknowledged strike was a couple days ago, where President Trump said, "Under my standing authorities as commander-in-chief, the Secretary of War ordered a lethal kinetic strike on a vessel affiliated with a designated terrorist organization conducting narco-trafficking in the US SOUTHCOM area of responsibility just off the coast of Venezuela. Intelligence confirmed the vessel was trafficking narcotics, was associated with illicit narco-terrorist networks, and was transiting along a known DTO route. The strike was conducted in international waters, and 6 male narco-terrorists aboard the vessel were killed in the strike. No U.S. forces were harmed." So again, I think it's important to recognize that they are not saying the nationality of anybody who has been killed in that strike. Again, all recent statements coming from White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. We've got UN Ambassador Mike Waltz. We've got President Trump, Vice President Vance, Secretary Hegseth, everybody talking about Maduro and Venezuela. And it sounds like the scope of these strikes may have been expanded a bit more. And it's not just about Venezuela or about Venezuelan cartels or even Maduro, but maybe a number of cartels in the Caribbean, which I understand that folks might hear that and say, great, more cartel members eliminated. It's a bit different than how this is being presented publicly, I would say. In fact, I would argue that right now what is being presented in terms of this being a focused narco operation, counter-narcotics operation, is not accurate either. To me, this looks more and more like regime change, and I'm not the only one seeing that. The Associated Press reported that Venezuelan government officials have floated a plan in which President Nicolas Maduro would eventually leave office, a bid aimed at easing mounting U.S. pressure on the government in Caracas, according to a former Trump administration official. The proposal, which was rejected by the White House, called for Maduro to step down from power in 3 years and hand over authority to his vice president, who would complete Maduro's 6-year term until that runs out in January 2031. And this comes along recent reporting just in the last week that Venezuela had offered another couple outs to the United States to alleviate pressure, one of which was that they would cut ties with Iran, China, and Russia, another being that they would hand over ownership stakes in some of their natural resources to U.S. companies. So we've got a lot of different things coming together here. Is it about, we've heard people say that it's about oil. I'm not as confident in that regard. There's pretty dirty oil in Venezuela at this point, but that's one. They offered up the oil and we said, no, not going to do it. Other people have talked about the focus here is because of their connections with China, Iran, and Russia. And they said, we'll cut those ties. We'll sever that. And we said, not good enough. They offered Maduro to step down in a couple years, and we apparently said not good enough. The one outlying factor here is the United States continues to press Venezuela, Maduro especially, to separate any material support from his government to these cartels operating in the region. The disconnect there is while there 100% is support from the Maduro government, at least at the highest levels, to some of these cartels, they are denying that, saying it doesn't exist, that it's completely fabricated start to finish. So in turn, they're not making any moves to distance themselves from these drug trafficking operations. Now, Senator Tom Cotton, the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, noted that U.S. opposition to the Maduro regime is not new. This is accurate. We've seen a lot of pushback here for quite a while. He said, quote, "It was and is the policy of the Trump and Biden administrations that Maduro is not the legitimate leader of Venezuela." And I'm going to play a clip here. Let's do a couple, actually. We've got Caroline Leavitt, White House press secretary, and UN Ambassador Mike Waltz in the same day. This is the message being hammered right now. Maduro is illegitimate. Here we go.
Does President Trump believe his days are numbered there?
I think President Trump believes that Nicolas Maduro is an illegitimate president leading an illegitimate regime that has been trafficking drugs to the United States of America for far too long, and we're not going to tolerate it.
It's the Trump administration has authorized the CIA to conduct covert action in Venezuela, and it looks like that's the latest step because the president said, I am considering hitting them on land. This is an illegitimate leader. They do traffic drugs. We're targeting their boats. Where are we heading here? Because Venezuela is going to the UN Security Council, say you're violating international law.
Well, they're illegitimate leader, convicted in the Southern District of New York, but these are designated terrorist gangs. And President Trump is going to do whatever it takes and use all the tools in the toolkit from the intelligence community, from the Department of War, and of course, diplomatically to defend U.S. sovereignty against actions that are actively killing Americans.
Then looking at this from the Venezuelan perspective, or at least the Maduro perspective, you can see how he's like, you guys are coming for me, right? Like that's pretty clearly what's happening here. And something I want to stress is there are a lot of wonderful people inside of Venezuela that hate Maduro and would love for the United States or anyone else to do anything to topple him from power. The way that Maduro is framing this is that what's coming is not against him, but against the Venezuelan people, that the United States would be coming in to remove their freedom. He talks about becoming slaves to the gringos. In fact, a speech just a couple days ago, he said, quote, "The people are ready for combat, ready for battle. Venezuela will not be humiliated. Venezuela will bow to no one. Venezuela will continue on its path of peace, harmony, and stability. Raise your hands if you want to be a slave to the gringos. If you want peace, get ready to earn peace." And then on Telegram, he posted that he was mobilizing the military, police, and a civilian militia that he asserts is million strong, probably a little bit overhyped there, to defend Venezuela's, quote, mountains, coasts, schools, hospitals, factories, and markets. So a lot of what you would expect from Maduro in this case, but, this is an unprecedented buildup of U.S. military power in the Caribbean. And then, of course, looming over all of this is the early retirement of Admiral Holsey, the admiral overseeing U.S. Southern Command that ended his career at 37 years of service. Is it just a coincidence? And maybe a personal issue, a family issue? He decided it's time to step away. That happens. That's normal. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Or does he have more information, have an idea of the direction the United States is headed in the Caribbean and Venezuela specifically, and he's not on board and doesn't want to be a part of it? I don't know that we have a clear answer at this point. There's definitely a lot of room to speculate in a few different directions. But either way, that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.